Welcome to Dark Vision, home of the creepiest true horror stories and real-life encounters that will haunt your thoughts long after the lights go out. Tonight, we're stepping into a place most of us think of as safe. A place where popcorn smells and the sound of a movie score is supposed to be comforting. But what happens when the flickering screen becomes a window to something much darker? These are 3 true movie theater horror stories that will make you think twice before you buy your next ticket, if you dare. Story 1. The Man Who Watched You Back. It was a Friday night, and the theater was unusually crowded. Emma, a college student, had been looking forward to seeing the latest horror film. The lights dimmed, trailers rolled, and she settled into her seat, a bucket of popcorn in her lap. The film started, and everything seemed normal until she noticed him, a man in the row directly behind her. His presence was unsettling, not because he was obviously scary, but because he was staring. Not at the screen, but at her. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just glancing around. But as the movie played on, she realized he wasn't watching the film at all. His eyes were fixed on her. Emma tried to ignore it, focusing on the movie, but the feeling of being watched grew heavier with every passing minute. The theater was dark, the kind of dark that swallows sound and blurs shapes. Her friends were in the row behind her, laughing at scenes she barely noticed because of the sinking pit in her stomach. Then it happened. During a particularly intense scene, a character being chased through a dark hallway, Emma felt a tap on her shoulder. Her heart stopped. She spun around. The seat behind her was empty. She told herself it must have been a reflex, a dreamlike moment caused by the suspense. But the feeling didn't go away. When she looked back at the screen, she caught a glimpse of movement. The man, standing in the aisle, watching, waiting. Panic set in. She got up to leave, telling herself she was overreacting. But as she moved down the aisle, he followed. Not closely, but always staying within her peripheral vision. By the time she reached the exit, the theater staff were closing the doors. She explained the situation, but when they checked, the theater was empty. No man, no one. Emma never returned to that theater, and she never forgot the feeling of being watched, of someone knowing her, even in a room full of strangers. Story 2. The empty seat that wasn't. Jacob was a movie theater employee in a small old cinema on the outskirts of town. The theater wasn't flashy, creaky floors, dim lighting, and the smell of old carpets, but it had a loyal crowd. Most nights were uneventful, but one night, everything changed. It started during the last showing of a late-night thriller. Jacob had gone to check the theater before closing and noticed something strange. There was a single seat in the middle of the 5th row that seemed out of place. It was clean, almost unnaturally so, like it had been polished recently. The rest of the theater was dusty from a week of use, but that one seat gleamed. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just coincidence. The movie started, and Jacob took his usual position in the back, keeping an eye on the audience. That's when he saw it, a figure sitting in that pristine seat. But when he looked closer, the seat was empty. Or at least it appeared to be empty. He blinked. The figure, an indistinct shadow, was gone. He turned his head, thinking someone had sneaked in quietly. No one. Jacob's stomach twisted. The theater was almost empty. Only a few people scattered here and there, eating popcorn, whispering. He turned back, and the figure was there again, sitting perfectly still, staring straight at him, though the shadow had no features, just a darkness that seemed to absorb the light. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was a trick of the lighting or exhaustion from the long shift. But as the movie played, the shadow seemed to move, not across the seat, but slightly forward, like it was leaning closer to him. When the credits rolled, Jacob went to investigate. The seat was empty, clean, nothing unusual. But when he turned around, the theater doors slammed shut on their own, and the air turned cold, so cold that his breath fogged in front of him. A whisper echoed through the theater, soft at first, then louder, like someone right behind him. "Why are you leaving me here alone?" Jacob ran. He never returned to that theater alone. He quit the job a week later. But even now, he avoids theaters at night, haunted by the memory of the empty seat that wasn't. Story 3. The Shadow in the Balcony. Lena loved horror movies. She'd go to theaters alone, preferring the isolation so she could fully immerse herself in the fear. One rainy Thursday night, she went to see a cult classic slasher film at an old downtown cinema. The theater was nearly empty, just a few scattered patrons here and there. She chose a seat in the balcony, where the view was perfect and the shadows deep. The movie started, and the usual shivers ran down her spine. But about 20 minutes in, she noticed something strange, the figure in the balcony across from hers. It wasn't a person, or at least, it didn't look like one. It was a shadowy silhouette, almost human, leaning over the railing, watching her. At first, she thought it was her imagination. The lights flickered in sync with the rain outside, casting strange shapes across the theater. But every time she glanced, the shadow was there, always in the same position, watching, waiting. Her heart started pounding. She tried to focus on the screen, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. Then came the sound, soft, almost imperceptible, a whisper carried by the ventilation. "Don't look back, yet." Frozen, she couldn't move. The air grew colder, and the flickering lights cast long, twisting shadows across the walls. When the protagonist in the film screamed, Lena's scream caught in her throat. Not from the movie, but from the terrifying realization that the shadow was mimicking her movements perfectly. She wanted to leave, but her feet wouldn't obey. Panic surged as she realized that every exit seemed further away, as if the balcony itself had expanded, trapping her in the upper corner of the theater. Suddenly, the shadow moved. It leapt, or glided, toward her, soundless, its outline blurring with the darkness. She scrambled to her feet, sliding down the row, ignoring the popcorn, the spilled soda, the warning shouts of other patrons who had long since fled in confusion. By the time she reached the stairs, the shadow vanished. Just gone. The theater was empty again. Shaking, soaked from the rain that had seeped through the old roof, Lena ran all the way home. She didn't sleep that night, haunted by the thought of those empty seats and the shadow in the balcony. And she hasn't returned to a theater since. To this day, she avoids movie theaters entirely. And if you ever go to an empty theater late at night, she warns, look carefully at the balconies. You might not be alone. So if you're sitting in a theater alone with the screen flickering in the dark, remember these stories. The shadows might be watching. The seats might not be empty. And sometimes the people or things you think aren't there are closer than you think. If you want more real horror stories that will make your skin crawl and your heart race, make sure to subscribe to Dark Vision and turn on notifications, because some stories are best not forgotten.